So this might be the most formidable matchup of any fifth generation or close to fifth generation fighters on the planet. And it could possibly be the most likely as well. We're going to get into that in this video and stay to the very end of the video because I'm going to talk about the radar cross section and what the stealth characteristics of the J-20 actually are. Let's dive in. What's up everybody, Ryan here. Welcome to the channel. I'm a former F-15E combat fighter pilot, F-16 Thunderbird pilot, and current commercial pilot. Today, by popular demand, I'm gonna be breaking down the Chinese, the Chengdu J-20, going head to head, mano a mano with the F-22 Raptor. I'm excited about this comparison because it's one that hopefully never plays out, but it's definitely got a strong chance of playing out in the South China Sea and the Straits of Taiwan. The biggest thing we're going to talk about today are the comparisons of what the pilots would actually see as they're going against the other adversary. I'm going to put you in the shoes, in the boots of an F-22 pilot, what they would be thinking, and then in the shoes of the J-20 fighter pilot and what they would be thinking as well. And some people might call the J-20 a ripoff of the F-22. We're going to get into that as well, and there's a hidden detail there, basically some deep intelligence on what actually I think was going on when they were building the J-20 and the different design elements that they borrowed from the F-22 and the YF-23, which was the competitor with the F-22. But before we do that, let's do some baseline comparisons. And it's worth me saying that all this data was gathered online, so don't get your you-know-what in a bunch, just chill out. This is not classified information. I'm gonna give you a quick breakdown of some basics of the J-20 versus the F-22. So one of the big things that I like to think about is the design of these aircraft and the build out of them. Because if an aircraft is still being built, it has the potential to be adapted a little more than an aircraft whose production line has stopped. Now that doesn't mean that you can't update an aircraft after it's built. Obviously you can. You can treat it like a little Lego where you're putting in little parts and pieces, updating software and things like that, which arguably updating the software and the technology is probably the most important. But I like things that are integrated and operable and basically built to function as they come off the assembly line. For me, that creates ease of maintenance. You might have less downtime with a fighter, and also you're going to get the latest integration of technology, and specifically in this case, we're talking about AI. So artificial intelligence may be able to be intertwined into aircraft that are actually coming off the line, potentially in more of a seamless, streamlined way than an aircraft that's already been built and is not under production anymore. And that leads me to the point that the F-22 actually was stopped being produced in 2011. So from 2003 to 2011, the F-22 was produced. Now we've got somewhere around 170 F-22s in the US inventory, and that number kind of changes here and there as far as how many of them are operable for combat, how many of them are dedicated to air-to-air missions, how many of them are kind of more of an adaptation for a multi-role fleet. But overall, you're looking at a handful of these things, so 160 or so. And then next up, the J-20 is still being produced. So does that give the advantage to the J-20 being able to still intertwine technology that's rolling off of the pipeline? Well, it potentially does, because this assembly line is working right now as we speak. As far as the price of these aircraft, the F-22 is going to set you back about $140 million, but act today, buy one, get one free. For the J-20, you're only going to be set back about a cool $100 million. So if you're on the budget plan, definitely stick with the J-20. The power is about 35,000 pounds for each engine in the F-22 and about 40,000 pounds for each engine in the J-20. And this leads me to my next point, which is payload. And this is going to tell you a lot about why the J-20 was built and what its function actually is and how it would fare in a dogfight versus the F-22. If you're the fighter pilot sitting in the J-20, you're going to have known from the get-go that your payload, your ability to carry missiles, is much greater than the F-22. And the missiles you're carrying most likely have a much longer burn rate as far as being able to get a longer distance and having some longer legs than the AIM-120s that the F-22 is carrying. And that's a huge difference. It's 28,000 pounds of payload for the J-20 versus just a measly 4,000 to 5,000 pounds of payload for the F-22. So as you can see, the ability of the J-20 to carry many more telephone pole sized missiles than the F-22 is a decisive advantage for the J-20. It's got more cargo space, more ability to carry larger missiles, and to get payload up to altitude at that quantity at 30,000 pounds is definitely telling us something about the design of this aircraft and what it's built for. And we'll get to that in a second. The payload capacity is greater in the J-20 as well as its fuel storage capacity. So it's able to carry about 4,200 gallons internally, and that's compared to 2,400 gallons in the F-22. So again, all these different things are just little breadcrumbs that the J-20 is leading us down a path of telling us what it was designed for, which, spoiler alert, is going to be relatively different than what the F-22 was designed for. And again, the speed differences are vast. The J-20 is going to get you up to a whopping 1,350 miles per hour, so nothing to shake a stick at. But at the end of the day, the F-22 has the ability to get up above 1,900 miles per hour and to super cruise where it's going supersonic without using afterburner. So speed advantage decisively goes to the F-22 in this case. And the design of the J-20 clearly carries notes of the F-22 and the YF-23, which was the competitor to the F-22. So if I was a betting man, I would say that the designers of the J-20 sat down with models of the F-22 and models of the YF-23, added on some canards, decided to go with a delta wing configuration, and that's what led them to create the J-20. Now let's get to the good stuff. So you're a fighter pilot up in the sky sitting in the F-22 trying to find the J-20 with your radar. Let's talk about the radar cross-section of the J-20. First of all, the J-20 has a lot of different bumps, which are actuators for control systems, and every little bump, everything that sticks out at all, even at half of an inch out of the fuselage, is going to trigger the radar waves to bounce back into the F-22's radar in a way that's advantageous to the F-22. So the radar cross-section of the J-20 is not bad, but at the end of the day, if you are outside of 50 degrees off from the nose of the J-20, you're really going to be able to see this thing with an F-22 radar, an F-15E radar, F-16, all the different fourth generation fighters as well are going to be able to see this thing relatively easily. Now that's outside of that 50-degree cone off the nose, but there's a catch. Fighter pilot tactics are to basically point at the target that you see as the biggest threat, because you know that your radar cross section is the smallest when you're pointing at something. It's a little obvious, right? So if I'm like this, there's definitely more surface area than when you're looking at my hand like this. Talking with my hands, sorry about that, it's an old fighter pilot habit. So at the end of the day, you've got a radar cross section in the J-20 that is much larger than the F-22. China's pretty close hold about a lot of their radar cross-section, but there's a lot of good resources out there that I'll link in the description that can give you more information on the radar cross-section of the J-20. At the end of the day, it's much smaller when it's pointing at you and you're looking at it from an aspect that's inside that 50-degree cone. And again, each little bump, each wing and control surface actuator, aileron actuators, all the different ways that this aircraft moves with its thrust vectoring capability is going to give it a bigger radar cross section. And to highlight that, there's no data published on how it would compare to the F-22, since the F-22 essentially will look like a mosquito on your radar display. But I can tell you that the J-20 has a radar cross section that's about 4 to 5 times larger than a clean F-35. So the advantage here, you're that F-22 pilot sitting up there at altitude, you are definitely gonna have first detection opportunity where you're gonna see this J-20 from much further away than it's gonna see you. But now let's turn the tables. You're inside the J-20. You're sitting up there as a Chinese fighter pilot, and you know there's Raptors out there lurking in the wilderness. You know that there's fourth generation fighters as well. What you're gonna see on your radar, and this is just my opinion, is you're gonna see a lot of fourth generation fighters, and most likely you're not gonna see any fifth generation fighters, and that's gonna be an eerie feeling. But as a J-20 pilot, you're gonna know that your missiles are most likely gonna have much longer standoff distance than the AIM-120s, the small little AIM-120s that are in the F-22, because they're relatively small compared to the telephone pole-sized missiles that you're carrying. So ideally, you're gonna try to get detection of an F-22, and maybe that comes from seeing the F-22 shoot down some other Chinese fourth generation fighter somewhere out in front of you, which cues in some of your sensors to actually see this thing, maybe without radar. Maybe with some sort of high-tech onboard camera that's able to lock on and see the F-22 just due to its paint scheme up against a contrasted background. If you're able to do that, now you might be able to lock on and get your radar to talk to that other sensor that you have, and then you may be able to get a first launch opportunity with your missiles, since most likely they're going to have more of a fly-out distance than the missiles of the F-22. So as that Chinese fighter pilot, you know your doctrine is not to get into a dogfight with the F-22. So this leads me to the strategy behind the J-20. And in my humble opinion, the J-20 was not meant to get into a dogfight. Actually, it was built to avoid it at all costs. The J-20, the strategy behind the fighter pilots flying it as well, is to target high-value assets, such as AWACS, tankers, other aircraft that are doing sensitive reconnaissance gathering in the Straits of Taiwan, or even a couple hundred miles away from that. If you're flying a low observable aircraft, which the J-20 is, it's actually less observable than a Su-57 Felon, but definitely more observable than an F-35 and F-22, as we already discussed. But as that Chinese fighter pilot, you're going to be flying around looking for those high-value targets, trying to take them out. And then you're going to be looking for those Raptors based on the fireballs in the sky, as the Raptors unapologetically slay pretty much every aircraft out there. So if you got into a turning fight with an F-22 as a J-20 pilot, I don't believe it's going to fare very well for you, so try to avoid that, all right? The J-20 has that massive delta wing, which is going to bleed off energy incredibly quickly. Now, it does have canards in the front, so the nose authority that you're going to get on your first move, if you are in a turning fight, will be relatively decent, but you're going to get one move and you're going to bleed off so much energy as that Raptor basically stops in space and becomes an Apache helicopter and starts to fire AIM-9Xs at you with prejudice. And those AIM-9Xs are actually a Block 2 version of the AIM-9X, which are actually low observable themselves. So these things can hang in the airstream as the Raptor pilot flies around looking for you as that J-20 pilot and just waits, locks onto you, and is still stealth while doing all of that. No big deal. So when it comes to BVR, I would say that the J-20 does have an advantage if it's able to execute the tactics and techniques we discussed before, but the Raptor is also going to be out there lurking, just waiting for that J-20 to make any mistake, and if any mistake is made by that J-20 pilot, you can bet the F-22 pilot will be sitting there waiting to just punish that mistake with zero apologies. And then if it's a turning fight, the F-22, in my opinion, has a decisive advantage due to its thrust vectoring and ability to basically just stop in space and use its Block 2 AIM-9X to prosecute an aircraft that is much larger and much less maneuverable. And then if the F-22 needs to separate from the fight, it's gonna be able to plug it into max afterburner and get out of there faster than a one-hit wonder's music career ends. Because the speed advantage goes to that F-22, and especially if they can make that J-20 pilot lose sight as they separate, it's just gonna be game over, and the F-22 is gonna be able to get distance and spacing, and then fire a fire and forget missile on its way out as its parting shot and say, sayonara. Hey guys, Ryan here. Thanks so much for checking out this video. If you liked it, leave me a comment below and go ahead and subscribe to the channel and like the video. It just helps me grow the channel and I really appreciate it. I'll catch you on one of these videos over here. Have a great day.